in beginning this illustration, I just want to say if you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, you're going to need to substitute in vegetables for the meat that you're about to see. So I apologize in advance for what you are about to see, but here goes. Valentina had a birthday recently. She's sick this morning, so she recently had a birthday, and we thought we would go and treat her to some food. And so we went to a Turkish restaurant, which she'd never been to a Turkish restaurant. Gokozo. Who's been to Gokozo here? Anybody? Great. Did I say it right? I don't even know. Anyway, it's lovely. No, Gokuzu, I think. Oh, wow. I'm not even going to try that. Okay, anyway. So that's where we went, whatever you said there, Joy. Anyway, and we got there, and we decided to get the family meal. There was a family meal option. And they brought out a mountain of meat, okay? They brought out a mountain of meat. And actually, I was shocked that as they were carrying it, that it didn't just all pile off somehow. You know, it was just stacked up. And every bit of it was delicious. I mean, there was nothing in that pile of stuff there. And we couldn't tell exactly what was what, but we just ate it and loved it and enjoyed it. And we said, we're not going to eat too much. We're not going to eat too much. We're not going to overeat. We're not going to end up making ourselves sick, you know. But this is great. This is great. And then we took it home. And actually, we took it home in these gigantic containers. They knew that you would want to take the food home. And they had these very large containers to do so. And we're not finished with the food. We've had it every day for the last 4 or 5 days. And it just keeps giving. It just keeps giving. And it's not bad either, okay? It's still good. Now, what does the Bible say? You know, we tend to think of Jesus as something that is boring and tedious that we must do. Like, he's like the manual for a driving test. I just got my driver's license a couple years back, and you get handed a manual, and, you know, nobody would read this normally. It's boring to tears, but you're forced to because you just have to if you want to pass this test. And some of us will look at Jesus that way. I go to church. Why do I go to church? Because I know he's real, or he might be, and I want to cover my bases, and man, is this boring. But actually, we should look at Jesus like a feast that never ends. A feast that we want to eat, a feast that we're excited about, a feast that surprisingly we put in our fridge and it's there for us every day, and we keep eating it and we keep thinking it's good, and we say, I want more of this, and we never tire of it. That's what this sign is about that we read about this morning. That Jesus he's not trying to be a caterer. He's not doing this so that he can have a future in providing food. He wants to say, I am the food. I am the food. Come to me. I am your provision. I am your life. I am everything that you need. Jesus doesn't just give us bread here. He wants to be the bread. Jesus doesn't just bring the fix to our life. He wants to be our fix. Jesus doesn't give us the key to heaven. He is the key to heaven. It comes out of him. Jesus brings the feast, and Jesus is the feast. Jesus brings the feast. Jesus is the feast. Now, so stepping into the story. We're going to step into the story. I hope you have your Bibles in front of us. We want to read the Bible. We're going to let God tell us what he wants us to learn today, and we're not going to veer from it. What God wants to tell us, that's what we'll hear. So let's pick up our Bibles. Stepping in the story, let's look at how Jesus first is going to draw in the fans. He wants the fans to become followers. He wants people to stop thinking about what they get if they come to Jesus and start thinking about getting Jesus. Okay, so we're in chapter 6, and we're going to start in verse 1. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing those who were ill. And Jesus went up on the mountainside, sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" All right, so we have this huge crowd that has come after Jesus. They're actually chasing him. We know this because this particular miracle is in all of the Gospels. It's the only one that's in all the Gospels. We know this crowd chases Jesus. They chase him because, well, you would think that they are loyal and committed, but it is a paper-thin loyalty that is going on here. They've been dazzled by the miracles. It's like the circus has come to town, and you have to see that Healy guy. I don't know how he does that. How does that guy do that? That's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, what's next? It's not real loyalty, just you've entertained us. They're interested in what Jesus can give, but they're not interested in Jesus himself. And we warn people about this all the time. You know, there are different reasons that you come to church. There's different reasons that you come to Bible study. A lot of those reasons, by the way, is stuff like community. Community is not bad. But there is this deeper thing that you can get at church. There is this hidden treasure amongst all of the churchy things, amongst the guitar playing and the electric sound and the piano playing the right notes and the singers singing, and amongst the food that you get, the incredible coffee at the end. Amongst all of that, there is this deeper thing that we can have, and it is Jesus himself. And we warn people, don't just know about Jesus. Know Jesus. Know who he is. Have a relationship with him. Learn and come into a place where this is the man that has saved me. That's different. And so this is where they are. And for us, you know, it's kind of like sitting in a car, right? And rolling down the window and saying, I'm a driver, and there's no petrol, and you just sit there. That's what it's like to come to church and then not have Jesus. And so Jesus looks out over these people and he says, these are fans. They see the miracles. They see what I did. They can't explain it. They don't really want me. And Jesus is going to change that. And this miracle is about trying to change that. This miracle is, hey, look, I am the source of all these things. Now, the second thing it notices here, and this is something that is told, we're told, that is not in the other gospel presentations, is that this happens during Passover. Do you see how it says that? The feast of Passover was near, meaning the feast of Passover is going to happen pretty soon. And not that it has happened, but it's going to happen pretty soon. And this is crucial information. This miracle is going to be inspired by Passover. Okay? And so what was the Passover? Does everybody know what took place? This is the biggest miracle that happened for the Israelites to bring them up out of Egypt. Remember, they were in slavery, and God has all these miracles. And the last miracle is a terrible miracle, actually. The last miracle is, if you don't let the people go, Pharaoh, every firstborn will die in Egypt. Every firstborn will die. And this is precisely what happened. It was a horrible thing. It talks about God's judgment, actually. And that's worth noting. That God actually judges people. Okay, and so actually, the Spirit of the Lord comes and slays every firstborn in Egypt. And we have record of this. But those who will obey the Lord, listen to him, act in faith, and they will take a lamb. They will slaughter the lamb. They will put the blood on the top and on the sides of the door, on the top and on the sides. What is that? It's a cross. Okay? And they will eat the lamb, they will have the meal, and the angel of the Lord passed by that house when he saw the blood on the door. And Jesus, we know already, who is he? He's the Lamb of God from John, come to take away the sins of the world. And so this miracle is actually Jesus' way of saying, I am the only way to escape the judgment that is falling on every individual. I am the only way. I am the Passover lamb, and I provide. My body is the food. My body is the meal through which we escape. Second idea from Passover here. For a Jewish person, this was the big feast of the year. This was the big feast because people were fairly poor. In fact, during the year, they would measure out the exact food they would need each day during the non-rain season. Okay, it only rained during a part of the year, and the rest of the year it was dry, and you had to have food in reserve for you. And so they measured it out meticulously, and when they got through to the marker, like past this point we can live, That was a big deal, and they were very careful to only eat what they needed to make sure they had something at the end. But during Passover, God said every family must take a lamb, a 2-year-old lamb. It's about 16 pounds of meat, okay? And they are to go to the temple, slaughter it, and then go home to the family, eat it, all in one night, okay? So you're talking about a big, huge meal. You know, our turkeys, that's like, what, 4 pounds, something like that? A lot of meat, okay? And so this is a big, huge meal, and yet the situation is that people are out. It's been 3 days. They've been walking after Jesus. They're all hungry. They're going to faint if they don't have any food. That's what Jesus says elsewhere. And what will the Lamb of God provide? What sort of meal will he be able to give these starving people? And so he's going to draw in those fans and say, look at me. Look at who I am. I am the source of your need. I am the way that you escape judgment. Jesus brings a feast. Jesus is the feast. He's drawing in fans. Now, secondly, he draws out our need. Verse 5. He draws out our need. Here's what it says. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he had already had in mind what he was going to do. And Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have even a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many?" So I want you to notice those words. Where will we go to buy this food? We'll come back to that. Why did Jesus say we got to go buy the food? Anyway, but I once had a youth event, and the event was to end on all of the teenagers getting a McDonald's ice cream cone. Okay, now, so some of you have had McDonald's ice cream cones, kind of know where this is going. You know, about half the time there's a big sign on that says out of order, right? Anyway, so I go up to the front and I say, "Can you make so-and-so amounts of ice creams?" And the lady looks terrified and she says, "We've never made that many in a row. We've never made that many in a row." And she starts to, she's sweating, and then they start up the machine and it cranks out about 5, and then it stops. And we're sitting there waiting for it to come back on, Mission impossible. It was never going to come back on. Okay, that was it. It was going to need to be seen by somebody and cleaned and all sorts of things. I broke the machine. There was nothing that could be done. Jesus asked an impossible question to Philip. It's not possible. Now, Philip is a local, but, there's no Tesco's in this day. And this far outpaces any production that is, conceivable. And this is all to show us God's requirement and our inability. That's what it is to show us. God's requirement. God commands perfection. You say, "I want to go to heaven, and I think I've been a good person." Well, God's like, "Great, be perfect." Okay? Be perfect. Why? Who's been perfect in here? Who's done this even for an hour? Have you made it an hour without doing something selfish? No. And so God requires that because he's holy, because he is perfect, because he is loving. That's the way Jesus is. But we can't do it. And God still says, "Why don't you try?" Okay, that's what he says. Why don't you try? Why don't you feed them? All right? And so this is for us to know we're all sinners and we need someone to save us. See, he's about to save us, but first he has to show us that we need to be saved. You lack. Let me feel it. Let me feel this. Now, it's a test. And Philip is good at maths. He says, "Well, no production, no money, not possible." Okay, really quick. What are you talking about, Jesus? No, not possible. Jesus is testing here. Now, what that word means is not that Jesus wants him to fail the test and then, "Look, I knew you'd do that. I knew you'd do that. You're a failure." What he's actually saying here is, "I'm going to use this to refine your faith and to grow your faith." The word testing is also the word refining, and it's the word for when you take a rock and you put fire on the thing and it gets intensely hot and it melts down, and then you take the gold away or you take the silver away and the rest you just chuck. That's what Jesus is doing here with his disciples. I will show you, I will build faith in you by giving you this impossible thing. And this is the way that God works, actually. God gives you all sorts of things that you cannot bear. God gives you all sorts of things that are impossible for you to do on your own. And when people try to do them on their own, they get heart problems. It's too much for them. And the reason he does this is so that we will learn to put our faith in him. And so here they are, and he says, you feed them, right? Where are we going to get the bread? And Andrew, he says, well, and I think there's some actual looking going on here. Jesus is like, you feed them. So where is the food? Where's the food? He's waiting. Where's the food? Come on, guys, get up. Look. Yeah. And eventually Andrew says, well, all we could find is this kid over here. Shall we steal his lunch? Yeah. Here we go. 2 breads and, or is it a few breads and 2 fish or something? Yeah, not much. It's basically bread and fish paste. That's all we could manage. And this is really important, actually. So Andrew actually is the one who's suggesting maybe there's a solution. He's responding to Jesus in faith. And this is really interesting. If you will have even just the smallest amount of faith, just the smallest amount, if you'll just even say, well, here's an attempt. God is able to take that itty-bitty thing, because it's this faith, right? He's going to take the faith and feed everybody with it. He's going to take this faith and everyone is going to get satisfied. It's amazing what God can do with just any faith at all. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. But with faith, it's impossible not to please him. Just even the smallest amount, I can take it. I'll just take anything. Those who don't know God, at the end of the day, they've had no faith in him. That's it. There's not even an inkling of faith. But if you just have the smallest amount, you can move mountains. And so Jesus says, have the people sit down. Jesus brings the feast. Jesus is the feast. He drew in the fans. He draws out the need we have. And now lastly, he will draw forth food from himself. He will draw forth food from himself. This is verse 10 now. Jesus said, make the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in the place. They sat down. About 5,000 men were there, and about 10,000 probably more women and children. Okay, so 15,000 is what we're looking at. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to the disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. And so they gathered them and filled 12 baskets, and the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. All right, so we have a highly ironic moment. Andrew has just said, we got 2 breads and a couple fish pastes, okay? And Jesus is like, great. Have everyone sit down. Okay, now you're the disciples, and you're like, no, we don't have enough. Okay, no, sit down. Have the people sit down. Food is going to come, yeah? Now they have what? What do they have to do? They have to act in faith. They're going to make all these people sit down as if there's a big meal, and they all know, I don't see a big meal here. Okay, well, this is going to go well. And they have the people seated. And what happens here is that we have like basically a dinner family meal that's taking place. Okay, like in the ancient world, the whole family at the end of the day would gather around. They would sit down. They didn't have chairs because there was no IKEA back then. Okay, they would sit down, and at the head of the house would be the husband, and he would pray. He would break and pass the provisions. Okay, that's what would take place. And so Jesus says, you all sit down now. You all sit down. I'm going to pray. He's saying, I'm going to take responsibility. I'll be the household provider. You guys be the ones that get filled with the food, okay? You guys sit down. And he prays, and he says, as if we are a family, let's eat the provision that comes from me. Now, I want you to know 3 things about this miracle. We've seen this miracle so many times. We're like, oh, yeah, then he fed them, and it's no big deal, right? This is amazing, okay? The provision of the bread is actually just a picture of Jesus himself. What would they have seen? They would have seen from one person that all eyes are on Jesus. And there he is, and they're watching his hands. because something weird is happening. Food just keeps coming. And they can't see the food multiply, but it just keeps happening. And maybe they're looking at his hands to see if they can see the bread coming out or something. What is going on? From this one comes all that is needed. From this one comes all the food, and it just keeps flying out of his fingers as it is. And he's the source because he is meant to be for us our food. He is meant to be for us what we most need to live. That's who Jesus is for us. That's actually who God is for us. When God declares his name, he says, I am always the one that will be what you need. That's what I am that I am in part means. I will be your provision. And so here Jesus says, at my very core, I'm exactly what you need to survive. That is it. Now, this is profoundly different from the Old Testament reading that we heard, isn't it? You had Moses in the desert. The people are hungry. They go to Moses. They say, we're starving. This isn't a good deal. Moses goes and he prays to the Lord, and the Lord's like, here's what I'll do. Tomorrow, I'll open up the heavens, and I'll rain down some stuff for you guys, some white stuff that tastes like bread, okay? And that's what happens. It's manna. It comes down from heaven. Do you notice where the bread comes from here? Heaven has come to earth. Heaven is inside of Jesus being given out for the sake of the world. Here's a weird illustration, but stick with me. Scuba diving. If you learn to scuba dive, eventually they want to train you what to do in case you lose somehow your oxygen supply and you need to go up instantly. And what they tell you is that you can actually usually make it up, but you just have to start breathing out and going as fast as you can up. And as you keep breathing, just keep breathing out, okay? Because the oxygen is expanding inside of you, and you'll keep breathing air out until you hit don't breathe in, Keep breathing. That's like what's going on with the bread here. It just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. They will never outdo it. And look, he is the only source of bread here. He's the only source. The kid took his loaves and gave it to Jesus. The only way you're going to get any food is from this man. This is the only place you can go. You can't go to Buddha. You can't go to Muhammad. You can't go anywhere else. That's not going to satisfy. The only place you'll find life is Christ. And look, they are satisfied. They all ate and were satisfied. Now, when I have the opportunity to have free food, and it's not like a friend of mine, so I'm not going to embarrass myself by eating all of the food that they've paid for, right? If it's somebody else, right? Free food, I go back for seconds, and I go back for thirds, and I might as well. This is free. And then you have all these people, and they're trying to out-eat Jesus, and they can't. They're all satisfied. You know what would happen in a society where they're like, you can only eat this much, or we'll survive, and they get, you can now have as many as you like? These people ate and ate and ate and ate and thought, this is so fantastic. I am covered for the rest of the week. I'm doing great. You can't out-eat Jesus. You can't out-satisfy him. There's a song by U2. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. You guys remember that? Those lines? The idea is, I went to church, I went and did that thing. I'm spiritual, but I haven't found what has satisfied me. Well, guess what? Jesus will never leave you dry. You will be satisfied. You will get what you need. You cannot out-eat him. He's got the goods. All right, now look, it says there's 12 basketfuls at the end. And this is to say that he fulfills Judaism. And he fulfills Christianity. He fulfills religion. Jesus is enough for all the tribes of Israel. Jesus is enough for all of our religion. Jesus is enough for everything. He is the center of what it means to live and to know God. And in him, we find everything we need. So this miracle isn't about Jesus catering. It's about how he is the supply for everything that we need to survive. And without him, we have nothing. But don't worry, because life keeps pouring out from him. He'll never, ever run dry. Jesus brings the feast. Jesus is the feast. So, first question, are you hungry? Are you hungry for what will satisfy? Or do you hunger for what leaves you empty? Perhaps you've been living life and it is not for Jesus. Perhaps you've been living life and who knows what it is. It could be so many things. It could be video games. It could be a career. It could be that you want to marry a particular kind of person or have this many children or whatever it is. Not even bad things, but you do those things and you're not satisfied at the end. You're not meant to be satisfied. There's only one place you can go to get full. And the fullness that you receive will go on for eternity. But you have to develop an appetite for it. And the way you develop an appetite for it is with honesty. I have things wrong. Jesus is actually what I need. I don't need this, and I've done a lot of bad things, and I'm turning away from those, and I'm turning to the source of life. Are you hungry? You can miss out on what you don't know is free. You can miss out because you don't realize, actually, I'm being given this thing. And this is free for you. Now, that's the second point here. Jesus says, where will we purchase food? Now, Jesus is not lying. He's not just saying that because, he wants to trick, Philip into finding food. He's saying that there is a cost for feeding these people. Someone is going to have to pay. I want you to hear this. When Jesus took the bread and he broke it and he passed it, he was saying, I will give my body to be broken for you. I will give my blood to be spilled out for you. I will pay to feed your soul. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Quite right. Free for us. Everything was paid by him. Breaking his own body for our lives. Is this the God that you want? Have you drank from the well? Have you eaten of the bread that never runs dry and leads to eternity? Do you trust and believe in this man? That's what I want you to answer in the moment when we pray.